focus on the crosshair a lot. However, when you're very experienced, you're really looking at the enemy, and your crosshair is there just as a point of reference to tell you that you're definitely on point. And for that reason, a small static crosshair makes a lot of sense. As well, with view model settings, it's really personal preference. You'll even see people like Davey that have a view model in the middle of their screen because it takes up less real estate on the left and right side. However, most people play classic. And the only reason this is relevant is because if you're trying to play with somewhat coordinated players who haven't yet learned all of the nades that really shouldn't use any view model tells, you might play with someone that uses a view model lineup. And it just makes it a little bit easier if you have it on classic, because then you can line up with the same thing they are. Again, you shouldn't be using view model lineups, but let's be honest, it happens sometimes. And when it comes to sensitivity, this is something that people always say is personal preference. However, I have a slightly differing view on this topic. Sensitivity is fairly personal preference for the most part. However, there is a range where you will see almost 90% of pro players fall in between. And if we're talking about eDPI, which is your sensitivity times your DPI so that everything is balanced, you're going to see most pro players play between 600 eDPI and about 1000 eDPI, which correlates to 400 DPI at 1.5 to about 400 DPI at 2.5. The reason for this is it allows you to quickly 180 and, turn around and check your flank very easily. However, it doesn't go so high that you don't need it. As long as you can 180 quickly, you don't need to go much faster. Now, if you're going to use a sensitivity outside of this range, that is fine, as long as you've been inside of this range and really tested it out. If you've tested it out and you've played with, 400 DPI, 2.0 sensitivity for a 1 by me, really bad. It worked, DPI 2.0 tested it out. If you've tested it out and you've played with, 400 DPI, 2.0 sensitivity for a while and you just could never make it work and you want to go outside, that's totally fine by me. However, I found most people that have very high sensitivities typically suck. Really bad. Now, before we go into FPS things, I want to talk about your key bindings, and there's a few key bindings you definitely should have. The most obvious thing you want to do as you're getting better at the game is don't go through your weapons with scroll wheel. Not only is it inefficient, but it also makes you look like a total noob. What you want optimally is to have all of your nades bound to specific keys and use those effectively. That way you're easily able to pull out a specific piece of utility at a moment's notice. For me, I have HE grenade bound to 4, flashbang bound to 5, smoke bound to 6, and bomb bound to 7, with decoy and Molotov on Z and X. That makes it very easy for me to pull out my utility right when I need it without scrolling through with scroll wheel or clicking through with a single nade button. Once you've done that, you can also optionally bind mouse wheel to jump. Now, technically, kind of similar to the 4x3 situation, this can be seen as a net disadvantage because you have a situation where you might get in a gunfight and you accidentally hit your scroll wheel, or your scroll wheel just clicks even though you were nowhere near it, and many a game in the pro scene has been lost to this type of situation. I've even made a video on it. The other binds you want to be looking into are, as I mentioned, your scroll wheel or your scroll situation. This can be seen as a net disadvantage because bind mouse wheel to jump. Now, technically, kind of similar to the 4x3 situation, this can be seen as a net disadvantage because you have a situation where you might get in a gunfight and you accidentally hit your scroll wheel, or your scroll wheel just clicks even though you accidentally hit your scroll wheel, or your scroll wheel just clicks even though you were nowhere near it, and many a game in the pro scene has been lost to this type of situation. I've even made a video on it. The other binds you want to be looking into are, as I mentioned, the radar toggle bind, which can be very helpful, as well as a full screen crosshair toggle. What that's going to allow you to do is move away from, as I mentioned, those weak view model lineups and see a crosshair on your whole screen to really line up with a lot of intricate details. You'll see most higher level players absolutely have a crosshair toggle. You most certainly as well want to make sure you have a jump bind. When it comes to jump throwing a piece of utility, it's going to matter which tick you throw your nade on, and with 64 or 128 ticks, that equates to milliseconds, and that means you need to have a jump bind to ever consistently land intricate jump throws, otherwise they're going to be landing all over the place. Now, to set up a jump bind, you are going to need an auto exec, which is going to be in your launch options. There's only a few launch options you want to even consider having, and I'll go over those in a little bit. However, for this part, you just need plus exec auto exec. Now, for the auto exec, what you need to do is you need an auto exec notepad. So go into your config files, copy and paste your standard config, rename it to auto exec, and then add in there this set of lines. You can really add in there anything you want. You could add in there something ridiculous if you felt like. What it's going to do is it's just going to exec this line of commands every time your game starts in tandem with that launch option, and that's going to allow you to consistently have alias commands that would otherwise be reset. There are two other keybinds that I'll mention but won't really go in depth about.
When you're trying to rank up, having a solid crosshair inside a Counter-Strike Global Offensive is one of the most important things to have when you're trying to rank up and become a better player. It's going to be the difference between you one-tapping your opponents, spraying your opponents down, and versus looking like an absolute noob. Today, I'm going to show you a workshop map that you can use in order to customize your own crosshairs. And I'm also going to give you a list of pro crosshairs as well as my own crosshair that I use in order to get to the level that I'm at inside of the game. But before we get into the video, guys, I have a message from the sponsor of today's video. This video is sponsored by Skins. Make sure to click the link in the description and use. Alright guys, so now that the Kojamo for all of the bonuses. Alright guys, so now that the sponsor is out of the way, what I want you to do is I'm going to link the workshop map below in the description. Go ahead and add that to your subscription list. It's totally free, don't worry. I know subscription sounds expensive, but it's not. Also, subscribe to my channel if you guys haven't already. It's also free. But once you've added that, go over here to the play tab, click that, and go to workshop maps, right? And now once you're here, look through your maps. For me, I have a ton, and find Crash's crosshair generator, right? You're just gonna go ahead and launch that in this mode, and you're gonna load into the map, and we're gonna figure out what crosshair is going to work best for you. Now, when it's your first time loading, it might take a bit to get up here, but trust me, it's gonna be fine. All right, so now that we're in here, as you can see, there is a board on the wall here. You have multiple different styles. Go ahead, don't worry about that at the beginning. I want to talk about some crosshair do's and don'ts first, right? Now, what we're looking for in a crosshair is something that is very simple. We don't want something complex with a ton of dots and different stuff going on. So don't worry about, making it super complex, because at the end of the day, the point of a crosshair is so that we can see past it. We want to see past it into our opponents, right? When I'm looking here, I'm not looking at my crosshair, I'm trying to look past it. So for me, this works best for me, this small little, blue crosshair, because it's not distracting to me, right? I know I'm missing all my shots, but I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'm cracking under the pressure. But what we want is something like that, right? For different people, different crosshairs are going to work. That's what we need to find what works best for you. Now, some of these crosshairs, guys, on this wall, it's more the community section. Don't use stuff like this, man. You're asking to be flamed and roasted if you join a server with one of these crosshairs, right? So don't use this big grid crosshair. That's awful. Don't use a crosshair like this where you can't tell where the center of the screen is, guys. These are all bad crosshairs. This would be a good nade lineup crosshair, but not a good normal crosshair at all. So do be careful when you're using this section, because a lot of these are just absolutely troll, and it is going to make you worse. All right, so we're gonna try to stay away from these huge crosshairs, the ones where you can't see anything, we can't see the center. The ones that have all these moving parts, I would stay away from too. It's just going to confuse you and make you a worse player. Don't use Summit's crosshair. My man is trolling with this, man. I know Halzark used this too. It's so bad, guys. Don't use that. But this is where we get into the nice crosshairs, right? Let me get off this. I can't stand it. These are the professional crosshairs on this wall, and you can go ahead and just shoot any of these, and they may not be the current crosshairs just because pros kind of constantly are changing and updating their own crosshairs, or new pros are coming in. But I guarantee you guys, if you constantly are changing and updating their own crosshairs, or new pros are coming in, but I guarantee you guys, if you use any of the crosshairs on this wall, you are going to be a better player, right? So just go ahead, find a crosshair on here. And as you can see, a lot of them follow the same little thing I said earlier, where they're not much going on, right? They're small, you can see past them, so that you're not focused on your crosshair, right? When you're in the flow zone and you're doing your thing, you want to see past your crosshair, right? So use this wall and find your favorite pro. Maybe you can use what they use, right? Like if I like Nico, maybe I want to use Nico's crosshair, right? Maybe I want to do that. So I would recommend doing this. And the cool thing about this map, guys, is like I said, you can customize this. So say you want Nico's crosshair, but hey, I want to put it in pink for some reason. All right, now I have it in pink or purple, whatever.